Hello everyone. Today's case is yet another one of a young man being denied entry into a bar or club and being separated from his friends, only to wander away into the night and go missing. We've spoken about far too many of these cases over the years, but they somehow continue to pop up, and the mystery as to what is happening to all of these young men is yet to be solved. 29-year-old Nicholas Adamson was born September 21st of 1992 to parents Jennifer and Bill Adamson, and also was the oldest of two brothers. Nicholas is described as a kind person and homebody that loved video games and was a movie fan with a deep love for Batman. In the late hours of March 16th of 2022, Nicholas would go out with some friends he knew from high school to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. The group would end up at a nightclub called the Moose and Goose, located at 54 Paul Didivitis Senior Way in Thorold, Ontario, a city in the Niagara Escarpment between St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. Now, apparently this bar was only open a couple days a week, and it wasn't going to be open on St. Patrick's Day, so they were having the party the night before, on the 16th, into the 17th. It was said to be a foggy night, with the temperature being unseasonably warm and hovering around 18 degrees Celsius. The group was reported to be inside of the bar around 11 p.m., and Nicholas was reported to have been having a great time with his friends. They were dancing and drinking and celebrating the holiday. Around 1 to 1:15 a.m., which was now March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, Nick would step outside of the club to use one of his friend's borrowed cell phones so that he could call his mom to ask her if she could e-transfer him some more money so he could buy more drinks. Jennifer said that her son called her twice that evening to ask for money, and she obliged and sent it to him. However, some of that money was not touched. When Nicholas was done on the phone, however, he ended up being denied entry back into the club due to his intoxication level. From what I've seen from this club's Google reviews, this doesn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. There were countless bad reviews of people being denied entry and re-entry into this club for various unknown reasons, but the bouncer has the right to deny people if they think that they're too intoxicated. That's understandable. But this meant that Nicholas was now stuck outside alone, intoxicated. His phone that he had was borrowed from his friend because he had left his phone and his vehicle at his friend's place, and this phone that he had was dying. Just a horrible situation overall that we have seen happen multiple times now. So after being denied re-entry, Nicholas ended up calling his mom back, asking if she could come pick him up. However, he couldn't accurately relate his location to her. Meanwhile, Nicholas's friends didn't know that he was outside and had been denied re-entry. At first, they just assumed that he was probably somewhere inside on the dance floor or just in the club in general. Eventually, though, it does seem like a bouncer would go inside and let his friends know that he was denied re-entry. But meanwhile, while his friends were still inside of the club, Nicholas would go on to call his mom around 8 times while he was waiting to get picked up. However, for some reason, the phone he was using to call his mom, that was his friend's, kept popping up as a private number, so his mom wasn't able to call it back. On one of these phone calls, Nicholas would end up telling his mom that he was by Collegiate on Niagara Street, but Nicholas sounded confused. Since it was so late at night and Nicholas seemed to be confused, Jennifer told her son, get a cab, come home, I'll pay for it. But this time, Nick started to say that he was near the St. Catharines Boxing Club, which wasn't far from their home. But as you can see, the boxing club would have been an hour-and-a-half walk away from the club, which wasn't really possible with the timeline of when he left the club and when he was making these phone calls to his mom. That is, unless he somehow got a ride from the club to that area of town, but then you'd think he would have just had the person drive him all the way home, or he would have mentioned getting a partial ride somewhere, but that was never said, which leads a lot of people to think that Nicholas was never near that boxing club at all. The last communication Jennifer would have with her son was around 1:55 a.m., when the phone he was using would die mid-sentence. And the entire time that she had been on the phone with him, it had sounded as if Nicholas was walking. The cell phone that Nicholas was using would actually end up last pinging nearby the Moose and Goose on Sullivan Avenue and Pine Street around 1:57 a.m., which also dispels the idea that he walked 7 kilometers north into St. Catharines. Jennifer would leave to pick her son up around 2 a.m. She would drive around the areas where Nicholas mentioned he thought he was, however, she wasn't able to find him. This went on for about 15 to 20 minutes before she eventually went back home, believing that he most likely met back up with his friends, crashed at a friend's home, or he would eventually get back somehow. Nicholas wasn't known to party. He wasn't a partier. He was more of like a homebody. He played video games, he liked to watch movies, stuff like that. And according to his friends, he wasn't overly intoxicated that night. So while Jennifer is returning home because she couldn't find Nick in St. Catharines, his friends were also leaving the club around 2 a.m. because it was shutting down, and they allegedly also started looking for him. They would end up making it to a 24-hour Tim Hortons nearby and attempted to call him, but he would never answer. Surveillance footage from outside of the Moose and Goose would later show Nicholas walking on Sullivan Street towards Pine Street before his trail vanished. This would be the last known footage of Nicholas. Nicholas's brother Jordan would say, quote, "Maybe he did not realize where he was. He thought he was a lot closer to the house than he was. He sounded drunk, but we have no reason to believe there was anything else affecting him." End quote. After the next day went by without hearing from Nicholas, Jennifer ended up getting worried and called one of her other sons to let him know that, his brother hadn't shown back up at home yet. At this point in time, the son would end up telling Jennifer to call the police and report him missing. So Nick would officially be reported missing on March 18th. Niagara police were said to be quick to respond. However, I really couldn't find much about their search efforts. I'm led to believe from what Jennifer has posted and talked about on social media that Nick wasn't found in the Welling Canal or on the Merritt Trail. Multiple searches were said to be conducted by the public, by family, as well as law enforcement. But again, not one trace of Nicholas was ever found. And it's been years now. And if he disappeared in the middle of a city, where could he have gone?
And the parents of a St. Catharines man are appealing for help tonight to find their son who's been missing for almost exactly a year. They hope somebody somewhere has information that could solve the mystery of how he disappeared with no indication of what happened to him. Al Sweeney spoke to the parents today and joins us live with their story. Al?
Hi there, Phil. Well, 29-year-old Nicholas Adamson hasn't been seen since last March on St. Patrick's Day, leaving a bar in Thorold. Since then, there hasn't been a sign of him, not a trace. For Bill and Jennifer Adamson, the last year has been a nightmare.
Confusing.
Terrible.
Yeah, we just don't know who do you go to for help, what direction do you go into?
The nightmare started a year ago at about 2 a.m. on March 17, 2022. These pictures show Nicholas Adamson after he left his friends in the Moose and Goose bar, wearing only a white shirt and black pants, no coat. He called his mother a couple of times on a borrowed cell phone and asked for a ride home. He hasn't been seen since. So a year later, it's a complete mystery. How could someone disappear without a trace? His parents say people have searched the neighborhood and found nothing. They don't know of any trouble Nicholas was in. He wanted to go home that night. He didn't have any money on him to attract a robbery. His friends don't know what happened. And security video from the area hasn't turned up anything.
That's what I say every day of my life, every day for the last year. How can you vanish like that? I mean, if he was suicidal and he did harm himself in any way, I think we would have found him by now.
We don't know if he got in a car, if somebody offered him a ride, but, like him falling somewhere or something like that, we've searched everywhere. I mean, I have had all my friends, the communities come out.
Police have searched as well.
He remains a missing person today, and we're just encouraging anybody with any information to give us a call and help us locate him and bring him home safely.
We haven't touched any of his stuff, Still have hope he's going to walk in through the door.
His parents describe Nicholas as a good son, brother, and uncle.
He's very caring, very good, like with pets and stuff. All his little nieces and nephew loved him.
They're asking for help to find out what happened.
Just like any little piece of evidence, any little thing that they might think that's not important could be important to find his whereabouts.
Horrible. He's in our thoughts every minute of the day, and we miss him, we love him.
So coming up to the anniversary of his disappearance, his parents can only hope that somebody somewhere can tell them or the police something that will lead to an answer to this mystery. Right now, they've got nothing to go on.
The only evidence that has been made public over the years are these pictures of the surveillance that showed Nicholas outside of the Moose and Goose. No other footage has ever been found of Nicholas despite him disappearing in the middle of a city. No one ever reported seeing Nicholas walking through the city that night either, and that phone he borrowed from his friend was also never found. This case really echoes those of ones we've heard in the past, such as the Riley Strain case or Luke joly-durocher, who both were also either kicked out or denied entry into a bar while their friends were inside, and then they were left to wander home alone. Now, in Riley Strain's case, it was ruled an accidental drowning, as well as alcohol intoxication, it seems. Whereas with Luke, his case is still unsolved. I covered his case not long ago, so I recommend going and checking that out as well, because Luke is another person, another young man that is still missing. The organization Please Bring Me Home has also tried assisting with finding Nicholas, which is a group that we've talked about many times before on this channel. On July 5th of 2022, they'd bring in a canine tracking dog to assist in the search, photos eventually showing them on train tracks. A GoFundMe would also be started to raise money as well to compensate the group for their time and efforts. Director and co-founder Nick Aldreeve saying, quote, "From what I'm getting from the investigation team is that they've received a great deal of information which has been given to Niagara Regional Police Services, information they believe needs to be corroborated and investigated. Some police agencies seem opinionated on how we get our information, and depending on how we get that information, it may decide, well, we're not going to go out and get that individual. Even though this individual has said, I'm willing to come forward, just have them reach out to me. If there is enough of a concern to warrant next steps, this is a half a dozen minimum individuals we're hearing very close. If there are differences in the stories, they're very minimal, but the people's names and the areas of interest are remaining the same." End quote. So what Nick's saying is basically they have this information that they've gathered and they're trying to give it to police, but then police aren't looking into this. Nick has also specified, though, that some of this information that they've received is from secondary sources, but all of this information is about the same individuals. So there may be some information out there or people talking or theories, but it's just not made public, it seems. Well, police would eventually push back and they would say that their detectives have met with individuals from Please Bring Me Home, but they don't agree that the information that they've provided has developed any new leads. So I don't know if that means police already had this information and they just don't feel like it's credible enough. It honestly just seems like a mess, and that there are these two groups trying to solve this case, but they're both disagreeing with the methods. But at the end of the day, Nicholas is still missing, and there seems to be no credible evidence out there, or at least, again, evidence that hasn't been made public that can lead to more tips coming in. However, Nicholas's case has been eventually entered into Canada's missing website, and then his dental records were also on file in case, remains were found. Nicholas's family, though, has been very outspoken about how they do feel dismissed and disregarded by police, especially when it comes to updates on their son's case. They also disputed police's theories that he may have hurt himself or been the victim of misadventure that night, which makes me wonder if police are just writing Nicholas's disappearance off as that and not putting in the effort to look at other avenues, such as, him being kidnapped or something.
Jordan, what are next steps for you? Are you continuing as a family with the search, or you just how are you dealing with this? It's got to be tough on the family.
Yes, it's awful. We're at any place we can think of. We've now thought if maybe he did get into a Speedy or an Uber or something like that and went downtown. So we've been putting flyers and everything to downtown St. Catharines, see if maybe he did take an Uber there and ended up there and got lost, but we have friends and family friends that are helping whenever we have time or whenever we can, whenever we get an idea of a new spot we can go check out. We're looking. I know the cops are doing everything they can. They're just trying. The cops, from what I understand, they're just trying to find a direction of where he went. Yeah. Did he go left? Did he go right? And once they can kind of have a better idea, they can start doing more things.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan, it sounds from your description of what you know of the events of that night that Nick was obviously intoxicated to a fairly great degree. So, I mean, that entire area, somebody could pass out, fall, try to get back somewhere, it's hard to know what the actions of someone would be other than the phone calls that you mentioned that he made to your mom and family and stuff like that. So he probably couldn't have gotten too far on his own, do you think?
I don't know from that area. So what we did from when he left to the call, we kind of walked. We went a bunch of different directions, or my dad had his friends go a bunch. Okay, and walk an hour this way to see where you get, and we started looking around those areas and things too.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. It's hard to tell because of the area. It's a lot of wooded areas and trails and the canals over there. Like which way he could have gone or anything. It's so hard to tell.
There have also been theories out there about Nicholas getting into a fight the night he disappeared, and there's other theories about him getting into a car and being taken somewhere. But at the end of the day, his family believes that his disappearance was not of his own doing. The big question is, where the hell did Nicholas go? He was last seen in the middle of a city where there should be surveillance cameras on every corner. So how can a young man just vanish like that? I think it's important to note that just like in the Riley Strain case, there is a river nearby where that club was. It's within a 10-minute walk from the club, actually. And it's been years now, so you'd think if he did accidentally fall into that river too intoxicated and drowned, that his body would have eventually been found. Although I'm sure there are people that may dispute that in the comment section. But if that's not what happened, it truly is as if he just vanished. There is no witness sightings of him. There is no video footage of him after being outside of that club. It makes me wonder if after the phone died, if someone offered him a ride and he got in and they took him somewhere and did something to him. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, that no other cameras captured him anywhere else in the city. Unless just video footage wasn't looked into until it was all overwritten. But it's been nearly 3 years without answers for this family. Where is Nicholas? And are there individuals out there that know more than they're saying? This doesn't seem to be a case of a young man that had, a history of having unaliving thoughts, or a young man with a history of, drug abuse or alcohol abuse. This was just, an occasional thing because of the holiday. So how did this one night out to celebrate St. Patrick's Day turn into years of unanswered questions? Let's take one more good look at Nicholas in case it sparks someone's memory. Nicholas is described as a Caucasian male, standing 5 foot 11 inches tall and around 140 pounds, with light brown hair and dark blue eyes. He has multiple Batman-themed tattoos that are very distinctive, as well as a wolf on his chest. He may or may not have had a diamond stud earring in his left ear that night. He was last seen wearing a white collared shirt with a black undershirt, jeans, and black Nike shoes. What do you think happened to Nicholas? Let's have a conversation down in the comment section. I'll be down there chatting with you all. I truly, truly hope this family gets answers, because there's just one too many of these cases of these young men wandering in the night, intoxicated, and then just simply vanishing. And the fact that we talk about a lot of them that happen in rural areas where understandably there may not be a lot of cameras, this happened in the middle of a city. And there's still no footage of the person. It's absolutely crazy, honestly. But what do you think happened? And do you have any information that I don't have? Let's chat about it. Also, are there any other cases you want me to look into? Let me know down below and I'll add them to my list. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.